and welcome to Byju's 6th, 7th and 8th grade channel. I'm your teacher Aishwarya, and in this video of Concept Bites, we are going to be learning about the structure and function of the leaf. Now this right here is a very important subtopic from the chapter Getting to Know Plants. So in case if you have some queries and doubts regarding this particular topic, then in this video we will be covering all the important points that are mentioned in your chapter. So I hope all of you here are excited for today's class, and let's get started. Now when I talk to you about the leaf, right, before I get started directly in telling you what is its structure and function, when we talk about plants in general, we know that plants have various parts that make up their body. But if I were to ask you, hey, why don't you describe a plant to me in one sentence? Most often than not, the first thing that you will tell me is, ma'am, plants are green in color. As a matter of fact, plants are known for their beautiful green in color that is there. But have you stopped to think, why is that green color so attractive? Or which part is actually giving that green color? Now, of course, in maybe some smaller plants, like maybe, shrubs or herbs, you could tell me it could also be the stem. But in most plants, let's assume the trees as well, we know that in most plants, this beautiful green color is imparted by these flat structures that you see right behind me. At this very moment as well, if you open your window and you have plants in and around you, you will be able to observe these flat green structures. So, what are these flat green structures that we are able to see on the stem? The answer is pretty simple. These structures that you see are nothing but the leaves, right? And the leaves right here are very, very important to the plant. So first, let's understand why the leaves are important. But before we get to that, we must have a rough idea of what makes up the leaf, right? So only then we will be able to understand its importance better. So let's have a look at maybe one single leaf from this particular plant. Now, as you can see, I have taken one single leaf out here. Now, as you can see, these leaves are flat in structure, and we see that there is a rod or a stalk that connects the leaf to my stem. Now, this particular stalk that connects my leaf to the stem is what we call as a petiole. Very, very important to remember this, right? So, a petiole is a long, thin stalk that connects your leaf to the stem. Now, a very important question to ask, which I'm sure all of you must be wondering. Do all leaves have a petiole? Now, surprisingly, you will see that not all leaves have a petiole. There are some leaves which are directly connected to the stem without the petiole. And such leaves, right? So, leaves without a petiole, yes, without a petiole is what we call as a sessile leaf. Right? So this right here is an important extra pointer for all of you. A leaf that does not have a petiole is what we call as a sessile leaf. Now, as you can see, the major part of the leaf is made up by this flattened structure that you see. Now, this flat, broad surface of the leaf, right? Now, if you take any leaf outside and you sit and watch this video, you would see that the flattened part of the leaf that we observe is nothing but the lamina. Now, the lamina is also called as the leaf blade, right? It's another name for it. And it is the green, flat, broad part of the leaf. Now, this particular lamina that you see, of course, this right here is an example of one such broad shape. Now, if you notice, leaves don't always look like this. There are some leaves which may look quite differently, right? There could be leaves which look like this, right? There could be leaves which look long in shape. So we see that leaves that are there don't just come in a single shape. They come in different shapes, they come in different sizes. But in all of that, the broad part that we observe is what we call as its lamina, irrespective of the shape. Now, a very prominent thing, right? Now, if I were to ask you to draw a leaf at this very minute, when you take a piece of paper and a pen and you start drawing the leaf, how would you draw it? I'll draw it along with you. You would draw one stalk like this. You will draw a long line, right? And then around that, you will draw your lamina that is there. So now we have understood this part is my petiole. Yes, this is my petiole that is connecting it to my stalk. Now I know that this is the flat, broad part of the leaf, which I know is called as leaf lamina, or I can call it as a leaf blade. But what is this part that I am drawing right here, which I will highlight in red? What is this prominent line that I am drawing in the center? And most often we tend to draw this, right? And I'm sure you will agree with me at this point. Yes, I know you are agreeing with me. So now this line, this prominent line that you see is what we call as a midrib. So a midrib is a prominent structure, right? We see that it is a prominent structure that runs in the center or in the middle of the lamina. And we see that from the midrib, we see that there are various branches that originate out, right? And we call these, or these lines that we observe, we call them as the veins, right? So you can see that the midrib also is a vein that runs in the middle. So quickly to go back, we saw that this is my lamina, right? This is my petiole. There's a prominent line that runs in the center. But this is not the only thing. There are various lines or various patterns that run in the leaf, right? So we know that these patterns or these lines that we observe is what we call as veins. Now there is one prominent one that is there in the center that I'm highlighting, which is what we call as a midrib, right? So we observe that these are two structures which are very important. Now if I ask you what is a vein, right? And if you tell me it's a line that I find in the leaf, that of course is okay to understand what it is. But that is not the scientific way, right? You are all students of science now. So when you are students of science, you should also know why you have lines on a leaf. Is it just for some pattern or is it actually doing some function, right? Is there some particular function that it carries out? Of course, if it's there in a living organism, it is kind of like saying, if I have skin on my body, is it just there for fun or is it actually doing something for me? Absolutely, it is doing something for me, right? So just like that, these veins that are there, they are not just lines, right? They carry out very important functions. We see that they are like tubes, yes? So just like in our house, we have a water pipe, no? We have a pipe and we know that from here we will get water. But how is it reaching the pipe? The water is coming through. There are various pipes which are connected inside our house. The water will bring it from the sump. It will bring it to the pipe so that then I will get my water. Similarly, we see that these veins that are there, they are kind of like channels, okay? We say that they are channels, or in easy language I will make it is they are tubes. So although they may just look like lines, they are actually tubes through which we see that water that is there is transported, right? So we see that water is transported all the way to the leaves, and along with that we also see that food also gets transported. Very important pointer. Food I have just mentioned, right? Food is transported. Now these of course of why we need water, where is this food coming from? We will explore this idea a little more when we talk about the functions of the leaf. But for now, I hope that the structure of the leaf is clear. Yes? Very good. Now, let's observe and talk a little bit more about these veins, right? Because as you see, that this pattern that you see right here, no, if you look closely, let me just zoom in. If you zoom in, you can see the structure more clearly. You can see the midrib, right? You are able to see the midrib. You see these other patterns, the other veins which are there around it. Yes, so all of this is clear. But is this arrangement, the way I drew it, right? I drew it differently. Now you are observing one kind of pattern. So broadly, if you think about it, is the arrangement of veins the same in all the leaves, or is it different? So you need to think about it, yes or no. Take a minute and tell me yes or no. Absolutely. No, right? The arrangement of veins that are there are not the same in all the leaves. As a matter of fact, there is a name that is given to the arrangement of veins. What is arrangement of veins? Nothing but how the veins are distributed or how they are present or how they are arranged in the leaf. So this arrangement of veins on the leaf is what we call as venation. Or a more proper definition of it is the arrangement of veins on the leaf lamina or leaf blade is what we understand as venation. Now broadly we know that arrangement of veins are not the same in all the leaves. Does that mean that in every leaf it is different? Not quite so. We observe some similarities in patterns, right? That means that there is one group of leaves which have a similar pattern. There is one more group of leaves which have a similar pattern. Which is why I can say that venation that is there is of two types. We can say that there is reticulate venation and there is parallel venation. Yes? So let's understand this in proper detail with taking an example. Now I am sure that many of you would have seen either of these two leaves, right? You would have either seen a hibiscus leaf or you would have seen a tulsi leaf, right? We would have all observed these leaves. Now when you look at it, I'll just draw it roughly. So imagine if I am drawing a hibiscus leaf roughly. Yes, so please don't mind my diagram. I'm drawing it pretty fast, right? So now of course when you look at a hibiscus leaf, we see that there is a midrib like this, and from the midrib we see that there are many which branch out, right? Just like how a tree has branches. Yes, so just like that we observe that there is some branching out which comes from the midrib, and we see that it looks like a net, or I would say it looks like a network, right? So I can say this is net-like that is there. So this right here is what we call as reticulate venation. So going back, we see that reticulate venation is when the veins are distributed as a network or an intricate. Intricate means very, detailed, right? Very fine network. So you can say net-like pattern that you see is reticulate venation. So guava, jasmine, your hibiscus, they are all very common examples of reticulate venation. Next, you have parallel venation, right? Now, reticulate means network, right? Think of it that way. Reticulate means network. Now, you have something called as parallel. Now, what do you mean by parallel? Parallel means that they are along the same lines, right? So they are at equidistant width from each other, and these two lines, when I say parallel lines, they are at an equal distance from each other and they are running. If I draw that line and keep drawing, there is no point at which those lines are going to meet, right? So parallel venation is when, if you see, like in the case of grass, right? If you look at grass leaves, you see that there is no prominent midrib, we do observe it, but rather we see that the lines that are there, no, they are all parallel to each other. Yes, or the veins that are there are parallel to each other. So we see that in parallel venation, the veins run parallel to each other in a lamina. So banana, grass, corn, they are all examples of parallel venation. So I will take you through this part once again because I know this is a tricky part. Now, venation is nothing but the arrangement of veins in a leaf. Now, the way the veins can be arranged can be of two types. It could either be reticulate, where it is like a network, and if you want to see how it looks like, you can take up a hibiscus leaf. But in case if the veins run parallel to each other, let's say if you pick up a grass leaf and you observe, then you will see parallel venation. Even banana leaves tend to have that, right? So we see that there's a midrib and the veins that are there, they run parallel to each other. So with this, we have seen the types of venation. Now why should I learn about all this, right? How is all this related? Now you see, venation also has something to do with your root system. Now going back, we have learnt about the importance of roots and how there are two kinds of roots or two kinds of root system, where you have taproot system and then of course we have the fibrous root system that is there. Now, every time if I want to know which plant has taproot, which has fibrous root, I cannot keep uprooting the plant just to see whether a plant has taproot or fibrous root. And I will not always remember the examples of taproot and fibrous root, right? You might remember two examples, I will remember two examples, not more than that. So how will you know if a particular plant has taproot or fibrous root without really looking at its root? Can we do that? Is there a way of identifying? Yes, there is a way of identifying, and that is with the help of the venation of the leaves. So by just observing what kind of distribution or arrangement of veins it has, you can easily determine whether it has taproot or fibrous root. So if leaves end up having a reticulate venation, right, where there is a network or an intricate pattern, then you can with certainty say that that particular plant has a taproot system. So any plant with taproot system will show reticulate venation, or I can say any leaf with reticulate venation will have taproot system. Vice versa, if I have to talk about your fibrous root, they will have parallel venation. So if I look at the leaves and I see parallel venation, I can say that this particular plant that is there has fibrous roots, right? So that is the correlation that exists between root system and venation. Students, please star mark this pointer because you see this will come in your examination where they will tell you, right? This particular plant has, let's say, parallel venation. Identify the root system that you will see in this plant. This is a sure short question. Or else they will even ask you to explain how is the root system related to venation. So you will have to say how they are related. That will come for 2 marks, right? So please star mark this point, and in case if you have not understood, please go back, rewind and watch it again so that you understand better. Right? So with this, if you see, we have covered a major portion of it where we have discussed about the structure of the leaf and we've learned about venation. But we also know why these leaves are so important. I told you right in the beginning, leaves are very, very important to the plant, right? And I told you that it has some functions to carry out. And when we were discussing about veins, I told you they bring water, they produce food, they have to transport food. So we need to know a little bit about where food is coming from. Now, when we talk about plants, we know that plants are living organisms that have the ability to prepare their own food. We have never seen a plant going nicely. You imagine when you and I are standing with our mummies to buy vegetables from the supermarket. We have never seen a plant coming and standing next to us and telling, give me 2 kgs of carrot. We have never seen that. But rather, if you look at other animals, they may not come to the supermarket with us, but you see them feeding on something or the other, right? They are not preparing any food. They are also looking for food. Yes? So in this particular case, if you see, the plants that are there have the ability to prepare their own food. And what do they use to prepare their own food? They use water, which is absorbed by the roots and it's transported all the way to the leaves, right? And now you know those tube-like structures, the veins that we discussed, they bring in water. And similarly, we see that carbon dioxide, which is a gas in the atmosphere, is taken in. And we see that water combines with carbon dioxide, yes, and it will produce food for the plants. Now, will it just randomly combine? Absolutely not. It requires some conditions. So here we see that sunlight is very, very important for this process. And it also requires chlorophyll. So we see that leaves are green in color. That is because of the presence of something called as chlorophyll, right? Chlorophyll is a green pigment which we find in the leaves, and this is what imparts that green color. And we see that they will combine in the presence of these two to give food and gives out oxygen. And this particular process is what we call as photosynthesis, right? So we see that photosynthesis is the process by which they prepare their own food. And the food that is there is prepared in the form of glucose, which is a carbohydrate. Remember, we discussed about carbohydrates and components of food. So we see that plants prepare their own carbohydrate in the form of glucose. And they utilize this to get energy and they carry out various other activities. Now, here's a very interesting thing. Now, they require water, right? Now, carbon dioxide, of course, is coming from the atmosphere, but water is something I want to focus on. Now, water is getting absorbed by the roots, right? So, let me remove all the things that I've scribbled. Water is getting absorbed. Now, does the root know how much water to absorb? I need exactly 10 ml of water right now. So, is there any mechanism like that? What do you think? That the roots exactly absorb exactly how much the plant needs? No, right? See, roots do absorb water, right? And there are various conditions for which a root has to absorb water. But in most cases, or at certain cases, we see that there is excess water in the plant. They have done photosynthesis, everything is there, but there is excess water in the plant. Now, plant does not require so much water. Now, there is no way in which leaf will be like, okay, listen, I've used how much ever water I need for photosynthesis, you take back the rest, I don't want it. It cannot function like that, no? So, here we see that there is excess water which needs to now go out of the plant's body. So, now in such cases, right, in our case, if I have to give you the same example, if we have excess of water within our body will get rid of it, right? So we will either sweat it out, yes, or it is expelled out in the form of urine, right? Excess water is removed out. So similarly, plants have a way of getting rid of excess water. And what they do is they get rid of this excess water in the form of water vapor. So see that it will get converted into water vapor, which is small droplets of water, right? Water vapor that is there. And we see that this loss of water in the form of water vapor from the leaves is what we call as transpiration. So this is a new word for all of you, but it is not complicated. Whenever there is excess water in the plant body, plant also has to get rid of excess things. It has no mechanism in which it's going to store it. So, or it will be there, but in this case, it needs to get rid of it, right? So, when it has to get rid of it, it will resort to transpiration. Now, how do I know, ma'am? Can I see transpiration? Will I ever know that transpiration actually happens? Or are you just bluffing? Are you telling me, ma'am, some process is there, but it's not really happening? Is there any way in which I will know that plant is actually getting rid of it? Absolutely. You can try this activity at home, okay? What you can do, you can take a potted plant, cover any part of the leaf. You don't need to cover the whole plant, but just cover one part of the plant with leaves in it. And I mean, of course, it should have like proper sunlight and water provided and everything. You cover a part of it with a polythene bag and leave it for a few days. You will observe that eventually after some time, we observe that on the surface of this plastic bag, you will observe some water droplets. You will see water droplets that are coming in, and that too inside the plastic bag, not on the outside. And we see that this happens, right? This is because the water vapor has come off, excess water is gone as water vapor, and now when they were trying to go out, you saw that it was covered with a plastic, wrapper, and now they condensed, right? Now they've become droplets of water, and eventually we see that you will find droplets. So let me use a blue color. You will find droplets of water on the surface, which concludes and which tells us that transpiration has taken place. So when we talk about transpiration, we see that transpiration right here is very important because it tends to have a cooling effect. Apart from just getting rid of excess of it, it also gives a cooling effect to the plants. So this is very, very important. So quickly to recall whatever we studied so far, we learned all about the leaf, its structure and its function, right? So now when we talk about the leaf, right, let me draw a beautiful leaf here. Yes. So when we talk about the structure of the leaf, let me draw a nice leaf. So when we talk about the structure of the leaf, we know that the leaves are attached to the stem with the help of a petiole. The broad flat surface that you observe is what we call as the lamina. This prominent part here is what we call as the midrib. And from the midrib, we know that there are many lines or channels, right? I'm just drawing a simple one. The many lines that we observe here are called as the veins. Now, of course, based on the arrangement of veins, right, we call this particular arrangement of veins as venation. Now, based on the arrangement of veins, we see that we have reticulate venation and we have parallel venation, and we learnt about what they are and how it is related to the root system. And finally, when we talk about the functions of the leaf, right? So when we talk about the functions of the leaf, we know that they play a very important role in carrying out the process of photosynthesis. Yes, then we also know that it is also important in transpiration. And just to add on one more point, right, we also see that in young flowers, right, when flowers are very young and they're at the bud stage, it also protects flowers during the bud stage. Yes, let me just write this down. During the bud stage. Yes. So these are some important functions that you can make a note of. So students, if you see with this, we have covered all that we need to learn about the structure and function of the leaf. Now, in just under a few minutes, right, we've not spent a lot of 1 hour time long, but rather we've gone in great detail with good examples and we have learned all about the leaf. Now, if you enjoyed the way we teach here at Byju's, then you need to know that we have got you covered no matter what. And if you like this video, you do not forget to hit the like button on this video, and of course, do not forget to hit the subscribe button as well, because we will be coming up with such short, crisp explanation videos as well that will help you revise anytime, any place. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to let me know in the comments as well, and I will see you soon. But up until then, take care, lots of love, and bye-bye.